came across many portfolios, many use cases who've tried the same conventional approach of case studies, walking through step by step, which is okay. But I've also seen people recording themselves and explaining the design process and thought process.
And that was Mo Sayar. Mo dedicated over 18 years to designing solutions that empower people and make a meaningful impact. These include more than 8 years in immersive XR, spatial computing, and AI-powered products, leading in-house and remote team across pioneering startups like ShapesXR, Gravity Sketch, and FitXR, forward-thinking agency, and more recently as a senior product designer at Meta. We tap into his experience when hiring designers.
If you're a UX designer, a product designer, and have a clear case study, that was good. You got the job. But now that became the norm. And every designer has that. Portfolio is one and only one tool. During my design mentorship, I always ask my mentees to have a strategy.
He shared his take on the role of designers within bigger and smaller organizations.
One of the things that I actually don't like is this combination or this predictive future of, designers and PMs are going to become one thing. Designers have to learn to code. Designers have to learn from businesses. Designers needs to stay designers. That's the main thing. And as soon as we start merging things together, we're just building a new thing, which is not designing.
What was his experience when working in startups, being a freelancer, and also what he loves about working in corporates?
One thing that I love about working in corporate is the sheer amount of talented people meeting specialists and working with a specialist. I love that.
And the role of designers when designing for AI products.
That's even crazier than XR. At the moment, as soon as you open ChatGPT, you know and you have the intention of using AI. And I think that has to go away. We had to design buttons and interfaces because that was part of the interaction. And if we get to the point that AI does that for us, we still need to design. We're going deeper into the root of design, which is the creative problem solving.
But before we get into it, I wanted to remind you that if you don't have the time to watch the full interview and want to learn from other founders and creatives at the intersection between XR and AI, you should definitely check out the XR AI Spotlight newsletter. By subscribing, you will get weekly interviews like this directly in your inbox and access to a list of tools and apps that allow you to experience Gaussian splatting in VR, on Quest, and Vision Pro. Just check the first link in the show description. And now it's time to roll the title and welcome Mo under the spotlight. Mo, it is a real pleasure to have you here.
Thank you so much for your kind words. Glad to be here.
Mo, we have been worked together, stumble on each other because at the end, XR is such a small word after all, right? And over the years, right, you went from the ShapesXR, FitXR, and many other companies. Now, this was not just as a designer role, but also leading this XR team and creatives within these companies. So I would like to start asking you, what are the things that you look at in a portfolio when hiring someone in your team?
That's one of those questions that I think I get a lot, maybe not every day, maybe every week that I go through my journey. I think when it comes to hiring designers to work on spatial projects or XR projects, you still need to look for the principles of, are they team workers, creative problem solvers? Are they aware of the principles of human interactions, the good patterns in the UX? But at the end, on top of that, what makes a difference from more conventional product design or UX UI design is the relevancy, how good they are in terms of understanding the technology landscape. How good are they to understand and work with the actual content and context of these new platforms? I do remember when I wanted to get better at designing for mobile, I wanted to get as fast as possible on mobile as well. It's always easier, better, much delightful experience for designers to design on a bigger screen. That's amazing. But at the end of the day, that design won't live there. It will be consumed on a much smaller platform while people are just running around, walking around, sat, laid down. And it's very important to make sure that your design is delightful or as intended within the actual context. Back to your question, I think on top of the basics, I look to find If the candidates know their context, and if their design decisions show they are aware of the limitations, they are aware of the empowerments, the features of the platforms that they design for.
So, and that's tough in a way, like from a designer perspective, you're still handing over what is to the portfolio because it's still on a screen, right? And so, what are, you would say, some example of maybe a portfolio of projects that you have seen that show that? So, how can, let's say, a candidate take his best chance of showing that he's capable of understanding the context?
That's also a really good question. I think I've came across many portfolios, many use cases who've tried the same conventional approach of case studies, walking through step by step, which is okay. But I've also seen people recording themselves and explaining the design process and thought process. That adds another dimension. I've seen VR portfolio presentations as well. I've seen portfolio reviews within ShapesXR, within Gravity Sketch, within Horizon. Maybe the overall polish is not as you expect compared to something like a portfolio built in Keynote or Figma, but it shows how the designers behind that can leverage what has been offered to them, not only throughout the project, but also as a way to differentiate themselves from others. One thing that we have to keep in mind is it's still a very niche market. Sometimes it gets even smaller during different hypes of market. These days, AI are consuming every single resources on this planet.
And we're going to talk about that as well, right?
Yeah.
But go ahead.
And at the end, we need to make sure that we are noticed. We need to make sure that we are differentiated from others. A few years ago, maybe 10 years ago, having a case study on your portfolio was a winning ticket. If you're a UX designer, a product designer, and have a clear case study, that was good. You got the job. But now that became the norm. And every designer has that. I think this is another problem. And as designers, we're supposed to be good at problem solving. So if you're a good designer, your portfolio should shout it. That should be one of the main projects that you're working on. I know that many of us might not have the time and luxury of like spending so much time on our portfolio, but at the end of the day, that's our tool. That's our one of the touch points that gets away between us and desired jobs.
So then I have a couple of other questions that come around this line because you mentioned stand out, right? And differentiate ourselves. Now, does that happen only with portfolio? And so a portfolio is one thing, right?
Yeah.
And maybe you could give us some advice on what to you is a standout portfolio. But it's just only about that. Because, for example, I think that standing out is also like the way you share, for example, on social media, on
Yeah.
LinkedIn, for example, or there might be other ways. What's your take? What would be your advice for people to stand out?
You're absolutely right. Portfolio is one and only one tool. During my design mentorship, I always ask my mentees to have a multi-dimensional strategy. You cannot win only by focusing on your portfolio. Same way, you cannot win if you're spending the entire time on social media, or if you're just spending the entire time interviewing and applying for different opportunities. We need to have this kind of omnidirectional, multi-directional strategy when it comes to moving forward. I always say that a successful interview isn't necessarily an interview which leads you to a job offer. The outcome might be expanding your network, learning your weaknesses, warming up your interview muscles. Standing out and differentiated yourselves can happen everywhere, basically, from the way that you present yourself online through your domain, through your profile picture, the tone of voice that you use, the portfolio, projects, how you present. And I would say on top of all of those is the actual core story or belief of you. What makes Mo a designer is ultimately different from what makes anyone else a designer. And going and tapping on that would help you to build your story, your narrative around it. At the end of the day, we all, as human beings, we love stories. Portfolio, online presence, domain, all of these are simple touch points that would help us to communicate our story in a different way. And as a creative person, I'm sure if you spend a bit of a time on that, you'll find your own story. You need to polish it. It's another design project. You need to iterate on your storytelling, on what's the core of your story, how lengthy you want it to be. Do you want it to be a quick one? Do you want it to be a lengthy one? Do you want to have chapters? Do you want to have a narrative which requires the other side of communication jump in and communicate? Or do you want to be a monogram, a monologue and just talk about your story? So you're absolutely right. It's not just about your portfolio, but portfolio is very important. In many scenarios, if let's say you don't have a referral or you don't know anyone from the job that you're applying for, most probably your portfolio would be the first representation of you. Therefore, it needs to be good. It needs to be memorable.
And that I would disagree. You know why? Because I think that so let's say applying, yes, so there is an opening, you apply to it, and then you send your CV, your portfolio. Now in XR, especially since it's also like a small market, I think that there is a lot of inside hiring, inside looking for people to work on this project, on this other project, sometimes also maybe not as a full employment, let's be honest, but there are also several opportunities that come up and they are not, let's say, shouted on the internet. This also means that maybe people, and the first impression that people might make, it is on social media. It is on, hey, I know, for example, that the team at FitXR, they are a great team. They have an incredible product. And maybe I start follow their design lead, or maybe I start following their designers, for example, on LinkedIn. And this is just as a very tactical advice, right? When you follow someone, for example, you can tap the bell a bit like on YouTube in a way and get notified every time that they post. So this means also that you get notified, you know that they're posting, and you can sometimes drop a like, or maybe you can, for example, send a message, something that is meaningful, because it's not just, oh, your amazing work. Okay, whatever, right? I mean, it happens. And those are AI bot commenting every half a second. But if it's a meaningful message, right, then that person will, because that's how LinkedIn works, recommend your own posting, because then you cannot just comment, but maybe share what you're working on to that person. So the process of becoming visible, I think it's much more organic. It doesn't rely solely on the portfolio of the CV that comes at the process, of course. But I think the things are much more organic and fluid than that.
I agree with you. I would probably change the title rather than like online on the quality of online presence. I would say the quality of your connections and your networks. You're absolutely right. Let's be honest. The opportunity for me at ShapesXR didn't exist. We started with a very short collaboration. I reached out to you and Inga, and then we built upon that and we created that opportunity. So you're absolutely right. There's not always the case of a job advertisement, a job opportunity, and you apply for that. So sometimes you need to basically build your way. And that's one of the approaches. But it goes back to the quality of, as you rightfully said, the quality of connection and networks that you build. It doesn't happen only on LinkedIn or on social media or on any platforms. If you're a designer and you're doing good work outside of XR, you're building your quality of connections. Why? Because the XR world is very small, but the entire world is also small. And you would be surprised to see the people that you worked with, you change companies, and then a few years later, you're working together, or you hear recommendation from those. So if we focus on what is really important to us, and it goes back to things of not just jumping on hype, not just seeing things as opportunities, seeing things that resonates with you. If I truly enjoy working in XR in this haphazard, unknown, uncertain, lack of resources, competitive industry, if I enjoy that, that means I would pour more of my soul and my effort and my time into the projects that I work, and it goes away. It comes along. It would make a better quality when it comes to connections. And it's not just about those. Being present and being relevant is important. So some people might not enjoy posting on LinkedIn. That's absolutely fine. Find your way of staying relevant and building a qualitative, a high quality connection and network with others.
True, and it comes with consequences. You don't like it, well, it's fine, but then you let's say have a different kind of reach that if you maybe you would post or share something in a different way. There are consequences. You need to be aware of what those are. I
That's
would
true.
like to shift gear a little bit, right? So when looking at design for XR in general, do you think it's still an afterthought? Like, I mean, it's several years now, and I do feel that things have changed and have moved significantly. Though, what's your stance? How have things changed regarding the importance of design in XR?
You're right. We might have considered design some sort of an afterthought at the beginning of XR. I'd like to consider that as more of a global kind of approach. I would say that kind of if design is at the decision making table or if design is just a beautifying function, an afterthought, that comes to the actual product and people who are forming it, not necessarily the industry. I know startups who are heavily investing in design from the get going. I know startups who are founded by designers. And I know startups who've been operating for years and years and years, and they've only got a few designers for contract here and there for a couple of months, there for a couple of months, over there. They use off the shelf design systems. And there's nothing wrong with that. I'm just saying these are different approaches that I might think is in the benefit of my company, my startup, my product. But certainly, we can see a bit of a change. Why? Because we now have, I would say, enough of different experiences, XR experiences, applications, games, content, that the differentiating factor can be design. A few years ago, you needed to have a technical solution. A few years ago, you needed to be very performative when it comes to your experiences. And that was kind of enough to win the competition if you're creating a game or something like that. But now that the execution effort is going down and down and down with the help of things such as meta blocks that would allow you to just drag and drop and create experiences in no time, or vibe coding, or 3D asset generations, the execution time is just shrinking and getting down, down, and down. And now there's another opportunity for design or for creative thinking. One of the things that I don't like about design is like this term. This term can terrify people. When I say design, I truly believe everyone can be a designer. And by design, I mean making a clear decision which has harmony, which comes after thoughtful, iterative approach. That might be just thinking about how we might tweak things, we might introduce new things or change things. And I think it has changed now. There is an opportunity for design to become the lever, the powerhouse of this differentiation and help with the competition. Now that we have large language models everywhere, and everyone has started with a text box, a chat interface, I don't think chat interface can win the competition, especially when everyone is relying on chat interface. And that's the opportunity for design to come in, to learn from insights, to do user research and build something meaningful for users, something which brings desirability for users, something which is technically feasible and also has a viable approach for businesses. And that's the true power of designers.
So, and you think then, is this something that you would say, okay, now designers can and are more powerful and are more effective because of the lowering the barrier to start creating in a way in 3D, either, for example, with Gen AI, either, for example, with coding, either, for example, with these pre-made blocks and SDK and things that are, let's say, more accessible to start with? Is that what you're talking about? So designer can do more, or it is about bringing their own experiences and their own, let's say, user experience analysis and view into the development of a project?
In all honesty, I don't like to wait for the industry to come and say, oh, designers are now powerful. Oh, designers are now at the decision-making desk. I think it's an individual journey. A designer can try their best to become more powerful, to become to get closer at the decision-making table with different approaches. If you're operating in a very small tech-driven startup, maybe learning how to code is your approach. Maybe. But we cannot prescribe that to all designers and industry and say, That's why. One of the things that I actually don't like is this combination or this predictive future of, oh, designers and PMs are going to become one thing. Designers have to learn to code. Designers have to learn run businesses. Designers needs to stay designers. That's the main thing. Businesses, companies, ideas, products need design as a function. And as soon as we start merging things together, we're just building a new thing, which is not design. It might be good for short term, but it's not design. And I don't like pushing away the idea of pure design. Yes, as a human being, you can learn how to code these days. You can be a designer and learn how to code. That's amazing. I'm not talking about learning the surface of coding and business language, which helps you communicate and collaborate with other team members. That's perfectly valid, and I do advocate for that. But I don't necessarily think the winning approach is for designers to become design engineers, to become designers / engineers / PMs / founders. If you're a designer who enjoys from being an entrepreneur, that's amazing. Go for it. Let's not just standardize the entire industry and say, oh, from this moment now, UX is dead, product is dead, and if you want to survive, you should be a designer who can also build and ship and ask for funds and run around and I don't know what else to do.
Yeah, and there is another thing. You also mentioned the difference reality, for example, between a startup, between a bigger organization. So I was curious, maybe from your perspective, since you have covered all these different roles, right? In a startup, in a big organization like Meta, freelance, right? Project as well. That is also a different reality. How do they compare based on your experience? And is there something that you could maybe share and recommend or do not recommend to people?
That's a really good question. If I was living in an ideal economy, I might have said no to many of those experiences. In all honesty, I don't think we all are built to go and work in big corporates and then jump back into freelancing and go to a startup and jump back to big corporates. That shift can be overwhelming because the way that people and teams operate, the way that how you communicate is fundamentally different. Your design processes, your time allocation, your thinking approach, your communication, all of those are completely different.
Can you break those down for us, right? I mean, like in a couple sentences. So that's how it feels to work in a corporation. That's how it feels to work in a freelance. That's how it is to work in a startups. I know it's
Okay.
tough, but can we do it?
I'll try my best, but this is my experience working at corporates, my experience as freelancer, my experience. So I'm not trying to say this is the average or the experience, and people might have completely different experience.
Exactly. And also everybody perceives these things differently, right? So there are people that are made and are fine working in corporates. There are people that cannot stand the insecurity of doing freelance work. So I think this is all subjective, right? And I'm really asking Dira about your personal impression.
Perfect. When it comes to working at startups, one of the things that I love is the rapid pace of improvement and progress. If you've landed on a decision, any decision, if you wanted to go through UX research and land on that decision, or is it just hunch and iteration, whatever, how, doesn't matter at the moment. You've landed on decision and you wanted to build it and ship it. It's way, way faster to get to that point of, okay, built and shipped in a small startups because the teams are small, because you survive. If you spend more time on that, you'll be out of business. The startups don't have that resources to survive. In corporates, no, you have a longer pace and you have a slower pace. On the other hand, you have certain responsibilities. Imagine that you're working on a product or a platform that has millions of users. A small tweak might become a devastating change. On the other hand, if you're operating in smaller startups, small tweak, even if that's the worst part of your experience, you can change it probably overnight. And with the limited number of user experiences, they'll be forgiven. When it comes to user behaviors, is also different. Users, based on my experience, tend to be more forgiving and more cooperative with the smaller startups compared to big organizations. They expect, and rightfully, they expect certain different level of quality, responsiveness, and attention to details. When it comes to working in smaller startups, the trade-offs that you make usually is about resources. Do you have enough engineering resources or time? What are the internal deadline or outside deadline? And you have to play with those. It's not to say that you don't have constraints and limits in big corporates. There are different type of limits. For instance, again, you might have to rely on a existing design system that might be powerful and helping you in terms of moving faster. On the other hand, if you're designing a 0 to 1 experience, that following that design system might be quite limiting as well, might be just questioning every single time that you're using an element. So there are differences, and in between, this is the freelancing or contracting area that sometimes you're contracting with a big company, sometimes you're contracting with a small startup. So within that area, the freelancing, you have the opportunity of experiencing both worlds and learn from those. One thing that I love about working in corporates is the sheer amount of talented people, professional people who've been spending their lives into a specific area, meeting specialists and working with a specialist. I love that. When it comes to startups, most likely, I'm not talking about like with AI heavy startups, most likely you meet generalists than most of the team, I would say. Definitely you will need a few specialists here and there, but in order to survive, in order to be flexible, in order to pivot, if a startup start hiring specialists, it would make it hard for them. Imagine a startup who have hired XR expert only, and middle of the road, if they decided to pivot, that means they have to build a team from scratch. And we've witnessed that many times. I don't know if we can name Bezi. Started as an XR or 3D company, but they built in a strong way that they could pivot it instantly. If I'm happy or not happy with their outcome, out of my word. But it's clear that they've built a very strong team, strong enough that they've managed to pivot completely and go through a new approach, a new direction.
Thanks for breaking this down in these groups, right? I mean, that helps. So when it comes back to you, right, regarding the things that maybe you would recommend or would you not recommend, what would that be?
In terms of
working for a corporation or working for a startups or working for, let's say, doing freelance work, where is that right now let's say you're looking forward to get more of?
Okay. Personally, I'm looking forward to find an opportunity within big corporates which are acting as a smaller startups. That's my ideal scenario.
Yes. And what else?
They exist. And they exist. Within big corporates, there are teams and pillars and divisions which they act as a startups. They don't go through the loop of decision making through the senior leadership. They act and make a decision and they own the process and they act completely different. And that would be my ideal place of work. But when it comes to probably suggesting others, if you're happy with uncertainties and just changing completely every day and day, a startup can be your thriving era. If you work better in larger teams, if you work better in a slower pace, if that's the way that you enjoy more work, big corporations or a scaled up companies probably would be better. If you're starting new, doesn't really matter. Just build up your skills. Don't wait for the shiny corporate or the shiny startup. Sometimes we lose opportunities by just underestimating the amount of learnings that each of these opportunities can bring to us. And I would say just learn, and learn.
So we have discussed a couple of times, and of course it dropped during the conversation AI, right? So maybe just high level, how have you been using it recently? And I'm not talking about generating images for mood board, right? Let's get past that. And I'm asking, how are you effectively using it for you? And have you successfully made it part of your work in XR?
Yes, I'm going to shift a bit of the gears and talk about my personal projects that I can share more about it. In my personal project, XR and non-XR, I've been experimenting with AI as a workflow to see where can I inject and how can I find and build a workflow rather than just an asset or steps throughout this. How can I change and come up with new workflows? I've been using it as just an assistant or a junior designer next to me, by just side loading the design efforts that I don't want to focus on, by building this agentic approach. It's not fully agentic, but building this agentic flow of, okay, this model will take care of this specific task, this model will take care of this specific task, and this combining together. One of the cool things from my own perspective that I've done is building a custom GPT and training it in a way that, okay, you are acting as a team of designers, an elite, legendary designers. I have Johnny Ive, I have Dieter Rams, part of that design committee. And whenever I share a design, a screenshot, or an idea, you all start discussing it and giving me feedback. Sometimes they agree with each other, and sometimes they disagree. And it's quite fun and engaging and insightful conversation.
That's nice because I mean, getting AI to disagree with you sometimes it can be challenging
Yeah,
because it's always like, oh, you're so good, yeah. You look, this is clearly shit. Like, I mean,
yeah,
please, can you tell me the truth? But
yeah.
how did you train that agent, let's say the custom GPT, to behave like to different designers?
Simply, I gathered design principles and philosophy and behaviors of each designer. Let's say Dieter Rams, Johnny Ive, and then, okay, you are a committee of 5 designers. These are the 5 designers. These are their design principles. These are their strongest point, weakest points. These are the objects that they've designed. These are the things that the teams that they've led. And they have to hold their own principles. I don't want them to become flexible. I want them to represent themselves and design principles and see things from that. And then by giving and obviously iterating on the instruction of how I expect the custom GPT to behave. I don't want a paragraph which is written within a combination of designers. I want each paragraph to be written from a designer point of view or perspective. And that's times that, for instance, let's say Johnny Ive and Dieter Rams agree on things, but sometimes, most of the times actually, Dieter Rams says, no, that's too much. We need to reduce the FOF and make it more minimal.
And so, is that something that people can try?
I'm not at because I've used a few not internal. I've shared a few projects with the custom GPT, and I need to double check if by sharing the GPT there is a chance of leaking those as well. So at the moment,
Okay,
I'm not
no,
sharing
of course.
the chat GPT, but it's very, very easy to create. There is no secret source or code or prompt or magic. It's just a matter of building what you really want. When it comes to creating those AI workflows, it's just a matter of, okay, I have to do these things. This is step, this is step, this is step, and this is step. Which one? First, I don't like to spend more time. And if I had an agent or an assistant, I would have delegated those. I would start from that. Which ones I can spend less time and get more benefit, I'll do that. And most of the time, when it comes to just casual conversation with AI, I ask them to not give me answers. Ask them that we're going to have a conversation, ask questions.
Yeah,
And
that's a good point.
thought-provoking questions. Just think out of the box, but don't give me the solution. Ask that. It's easier. And I'll do that when it comes to other things. For instance, I'm looking for how to fix a pipe. I need an answer. I don't want a creative challenge here. But when it comes to my career, I know that if I start using that, my brain becomes weak and weak and weak. And I don't want that to happen to me.
So, is there some other example in which that help you with, let's say, XR related? Like, how
Yeah.
does that kind of like things translate into the support that AI can give to an XR designer?
I would say one of the things that I really like is to compare the mental models. Okay, let's say I'm working on a new interaction model, and I want to check if this new interaction model can be linked to existing mental model or interaction model on different platforms. Let's say I'm working on some sort of a spatial gesture. It's a spatial, it's new, it's innovative. But on the other hand, I know as a designer that if I design it in a 100% pure innovative, there is a chance of lack of adaptability. There's a chance of people not being familiar with it and just ignoring it. Therefore, I want to know if there is any other mental model, existing mental model or interaction patterns that I might have forgotten and might have not have in my mind that has a link with it. And then finding that link with the help of AI, because it's tireless, it can go and research, and then focusing on that to make that connection stronger and stronger and stronger, and probably repositioning it. One of the coolest project that I've worked recently was part of, I think it was the XR hackathon last year, if I'm not mistaken, and that I had this pen cap pooling interaction model. I had this idea of, okay, I have this pen, and I kind of knew that Apple would eventually bring some sort of a pen for the Vision Pro, so I wanted to be ready for that. But I didn't want to have another UI panel and then pointing with the pen towards that, because that's not really a function of the pen. The function of the pen is to point at the drawing surface, whatever drawing surface is this, and then draw on that, leave a mark on this. So we're thinking about that, and then I came up with this kind of pulling the pen cap out as the main interaction. And I wanted to check if that's relevant, if that has a physical root. And with the help of AI, I've been reminded that yes, we pull doors, we pull drawers, we pull our socks up. We do that into that model, that physical model, and that would help. It's easy to learn and it's intuitive. Why? Because we do that with pens as well in physical words. So by doing that gesture, you have the opportunity of learning it once and it comes to you. You don't need to go through that, and lowers the cognitive load when you're actually working on that. That's kind of the things that I'm trying to do. Obviously, 3D model generation for early prototyping. I'm being honest. If I don't want to share that prototype with higher leadership, I would still use gray boxing. I would still use cubes, spheres, cones. I don't care about the geometry. I use color-coded cubes, and that's fine for me. I will start a presentation. Whenever you see a purple cube, for instance, that's a trigger. But when it comes to a higher level or other type of communication, which I think, or I guess, lack of visuals might lead to them guessing or having their own interpretation, yes, I'll put more effort and I'll bring more fidelity to this. That might be texture, that might be color, that might be the actual geometry model, that might be the interactive prototype that I know, an animation that I know ShapesXR is working on that, and I had the chance to play with the beta, which is very promising. But those are part of the flow, which I think anyone is using. It's just a matter of finding which area you can leverage it to be more useful for yourself.
So we have discussed and shared some example about how we use AI for design, but what about designing for AI products? I mean, how does that look?
That's even crazier than XR. That's even nicher than XR, because
Is it niche? Like, I mean, because I can imagine that right now as a designer, there is also this opportunity with so many companies that are building these AI products, right? And
yeah,
of different scale and size, from the indie team and one developer only building a tool that
yeah,
makes gazillions of sales already, maybe might be looking for a designer, to, of
yeah.
course, all corporations that are trying to get the simplest summary on emails or using on their own database, right? So there is a lot of opportunities here.
That's true. You're right. By niche, I didn't mean about the industry being niche. The industry is very huge. By niche, I meant about the design, the tried and loved design patterns. The tried and loved ones at the moment is just chat boxes. At the moment, you have chat box and you talk to them. But I don't believe that is the ultimate solution. And getting out of this known and heavily used pattern is quite hard. Designing for AI requires you to know it fundamentally, to know how this model has been trained, how is it going to be used, and try to break it. Try to go around and see, okay, what are the weaknesses of this model? To have those in mind while designing for it. Designing for a model to be optimized, to be used in optimized way is something, designing for a model to be used by actual human beings in a way that is intuitive for them. It doesn't require them a steep learning curve. That's another thing. And that
So
goes back on.
there is just one thing that here is kind of like it's a bit confusing because I mean when we're talking about designing for AI, for AI product, it can mean a gazillion things,
Yeah.
right? It can mean indeed design for a chatbot, like asking questions. There are several creative tools, right? That goes from Mid Journey to some other tools that allows you to, for example, to assemble scenes and use diffusion models like Crea to recreate a final image. There is video products. There are also physical like wearables. Of course, those are also they have an AI component in it. So maybe the point is like it's a bit like what should be the role of designers when we are thinking about these different products, and maybe we can focus on one, right? Because otherwise I don't think that it's the same. It can be the same, the role, because I'm asking what's the design role of an architect or of a website designer. Well, they are different because they are different products.
That's true. That's true. Which one would you like to focus on?
I mean, maybe you tell me the one you're most passionate about and think where should be the role of designers in that specific use case.
I'm more passionate about the faceless, headless, invisible AI design in a way that you use AI without thinking about, I'm going to use AI. At the moment, as soon as you open ChatGPT, you know, and you have the intention of using AI. And I think that has to go away. It's like the way that when you want to make a call or when you want to send a message, you don't think about, okay, I need to have a phone. I need to unlock my phone. You do this very, very intuitively. You don't think about those. But at the moment, you think about, okay, this is the first trigger moment of using AI. And products are like, at the moment, are shaping around this intention behavior of users. I like to work towards the invisible, headless, faceless AI era. And I think one of the cool form factors are wearables like Ray-Ban Meta glasses. It's very powerful. It's still a very, very young product. I have to say that. It hasn't been around more than 2 years, if I'm not mistaken, less than 2 years, actually. Not considering the Ray-Ban Astoria, the previous generation, but Ray-Ban Meta glasses has been around, if I'm not mistaken, about 2 years, and it's very powerful. For instance, Be My Eyes integration, for those of you who might not know, Be My Eyes is an application, has been around for years. It helps people with vision impairments, low vision or lack of vision, to carry on their day-to-day tasks. How this application works normally is you install it on your phone and they would install it on their phone. Whenever they face a challenge, they would call you, and then you have to guide them through how they move their phone to point towards the source of challenge, and then through your camera or through a video call, you try to help them. Now with the integration with Ray-Ban Meta glasses, it becomes very more intuitive. They are wearing glasses with a command. They start the call with a volunteer and go through that. That made it much intuitive. Or other things like this is let's focus on that. You don't think about using AI. You think about, I'm facing a challenge and I need help. Part of that is carried out by AI, part of it by volunteers. We might reach a point that you don't need the volunteers, and AI is capable of taking completely care of that with full responsibility and full confidence, but we're still not there yet. Let's say you're reading labels of medicines. We still need someone to take responsibility and give you the assurance. But designing for that requires you to see past AI, to go beyond that, to think about, I would say, even deeper than that, which is human communication and human interaction. I think we are reaching the level of technology becoming invisible, and therefore we will be designing for human and human interaction rather than human and computer interaction. Why? Because if LLMs are trying to mimic our intelligence, at the end of the day, the goal is to act and mimic as a human being. So we will designers will be designing human and human. That's one is a capital H, the other one is
You got me a bit confused there.
okay.
I mean, so can you rearticulate that
Okay,
last
cool.
concept?
Let's. What's the ultimate goal of any AI agent? To reach the level of intelligence and control and behavior that you can say, oh, I didn't know that's AI. I thought that's a human being, right? They can pass all tests, all tasks, all exams as if a human would gone through that.
I mean, I would argue that's not the task of the agent, but the people that are building the agents. The
Yes.
objective of the people that are building the agents is to build the smartest agent that can do everything you want.
Yeah, I agree. And then throughout this journey, yes, designers are designing the human using that AI model, and the AI model as a representation of computer interaction. So you're still designing human computer interaction, right? But if this computer evolves into a being that you can call it a human like, you're actually designing human interactions, which is deeper, which is
Okay.
heavier.
Yes. Now, the point is that so there is this technology, right, and the ways we are interacting with it that is changing dramatically, right? It's changing, and it's never changed at a faster pace than before, due also to, of course, AI. Now, what do you think are the roles of designers? So if we take this step back down to earth, right, and say like, okay, I'm a designer where there is this looming threat of AI. Let's say I would not necessarily taking over my job, but there is this threat. It's like, how are we going to behave? What's going to happen of my role within companies and organizations? And then there is this raising opportunities. And also because when we talk about design, and we, in a way, for some reason, we always end up thinking about apps and buttons and colors and fonts, right? But if we take away that abstraction, right? I am a creative, I have critical thinking, problem solving, and being that the case and having this looming threat of AI, but still these increased opportunities of this new way in which we are going to interact with physical, with digital, with physical on top of digital, because that's what's going to happen. So what would you say should be the advice to those designers, creative and critical thinkers that are facing this challenge in upcoming 5, 10, 15 years?
Gab, I think you answered your own questions. You said it rightfully. Designing interfaces never been a designer job from the first place. We were forced to design buttons. We had to design buttons and interfaces because that was part of the interaction. And if we get to the point that AI does that for us, or if we land on a new form factor which doesn't have any button, we still need to design. We're going deeper into the root of design, which is the creative problem solving. At the end of the day, no one goes to a website just for the sake of clicking on a button. That's never been the intention, right? You have a desire, you have a problem that you want to solve, and the website might provide a solution. And throughout that website, a few screens might be part of that solution, and a button might get you closer to that solution. So it's getting back to the silly but very important question of who bars a nail or like a drill, or what you're selling. Are you selling a drill? Are you selling a kind of a hole in the wall? Are you selling a frame to house a photo and then hang it on the wall? None of those. At the end of the day, as human beings, we want some sort of emotional state, which might be carried out by looking at a photo framed, hanged on a wall.
And this brings me also kind of like, if I can think about something very tangible that I think maybe people should try to pursue, and I would like to hear your thought on this, is not looking at, when looking at project, it's more about try to find an interesting problem to solve that often has to do, for example, with an architecture of an experience, right? And architecture of a product. And instead of, oh, I've designed the website or I've designed this app. No, the problem is that people were not finding this, or that other technical and tough problems and frame those instead of the actual design, the actual bottom, because that shows then what we say at the beginning, those critical thinking. So it's more about architecture and being a design architect, maybe, instead of just a designer. Is that a way in which maybe this could help?
That is the way, but having said that, I'd like to not add to this craziness and madness of design things, design blank titles, design architects, design engineers. We are designers. Deliverables would change. 3D designer is a designer. XR designer is a designer, product designer, UX designer, architecture designer. We all are designer, and we try to be creative at solving a problem. And going to the main problem is the ultimate key, I would say. You're right. Someday the problem might have been, oh, we've built this an amazing service, but no one discovers the service. So let's rely on SEOs. You don't rely on SEOs these days, right? Your AI agent will find whatever you need. So you don't need, the businesses don't need to invest on become discoverable, because the agent can go deepest routes of internet and find whatever you exactly wanted. And going back to what is the actual problem that we're trying to solve? What is the state, the human state? And that's what I very focus on. We're going to design for humans. Our jobs won't go away. It would change in terms of the amount of time that we spend on designing buttons or not buttons. Interfaces will change. If you think about it, one of the kind of biggest trends in design is to learn how to place a CTA, how to design it, where to place it, how to color it, how to code it, in order to provide highest chance or probability of being clicked. And always it's been a chance. No one had been ever said that if you place a button here and you color it blue, 100% it will be clicked. There's still a chance. We do UX research, we do A/B testing and everything. But we are reaching an era that AI can design and render the interface based on your personalities. So it would place the button, if there is a button, place a button where is most convenient and has a higher probability to be clicked by you, which might be completely different for the placement and look and feel that might have for me. Yes, you might ask, what happens to the branding? Who cares about branding? I might say button and visual interfaces might go away completely. What's next? Let's figure it out together.
Thank you very much for listening in. If you like the show, remember to leave a rating on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or a thumbs up on YouTube. It really helps me keep doing this and shine the spotlights on the greatest founders and makers, pushing the boundaries of XR and AI. Also, make sure to check out the show page xraispotlight.com, where you can find more conversation like this one. Till next time.